Cars vanish all the time, but when they resurface decades later, it's never where you'd expect. Buried in dirt, locked away in vaults, or even pulled from rivers. Take the mansion in Atherton, where Sky 7 captured investigators and police dogs circling a car completely buried in the backyard of a multi-million-dollar estate. The stories behind these discoveries are nothing short of unbelievable. Some cars were hidden on purpose, others lost by pure accident, and each one will leave you speechless. From a family wagon missing for 60 years to a luxury convertible dug up from a millionaire's yard, these are the most jaw-dropping buried car finds ever uncovered. The buried Ferrari. In the late 1970s, two kids digging in a front yard on West 119th Street in Los Angeles hit something solid with their shovel. At first, it seemed like just a buried pipe. But when deputies Joe Sabus and Lenny Carroll brought in a skip loader, the ground revealed a dark green 1974 Ferrari Dino 246 GTS, a car that would shock the entire neighborhood. This wasn't just any classic. The Ferrari had been reported stolen 4 years earlier. Its owner, Rosendo Cruz, a plumber from Alhambra, had purchased it brand new in October 1974 for around $22,500 as a gift for his wife. It featured Campagnolo wheels and Daytona seats. But just 2 months later, after a dinner on Wilshire Boulevard, Cruz parked the car on the street, avoiding the valet, and returned to find it gone. Farmers' insurance paid the claim, and the Ferrari disappeared. When it was dug up in 1978, the car was still wrapped in plastic and tarps, with towels inside to absorb moisture. The thieves had left the windows cracked, and dirt and water had seeped in. Luckily, the dry conditions limited rust damage. Farmers repossessed the vehicle, but on display, curious onlookers stripped some parts. Investigators eventually uncovered the truth. It had been part of an elaborate insurance scam. Cruz and hired thieves were supposed to destroy the Ferrari, but instead, they buried it. Years later, real estate businessman Brad Howard purchased the Dino, had Ferrari expert Joseph Capolonga restore it, and still owns it today. Its license plate says it all. DUGUP, the buried Belvedere. In 1957, Tulsa decided to celebrate Oklahoma's 50th year of statehood with something unforgettable. A brand new two-tone Plymouth Belvedere, showing just 4 miles on the odometer, was lowered into a concrete vault beneath the courthouse lawn. The vault, hyped as bomb-proof, measured 12 by 20 feet and was packed with period treasures. A 48-star American flag, a $100 savings account, bottles of motor oil, a 5-gallon can of gas, and even a case of Schlitz beer. The plan? In 2007, 50 years later, whoever had guessed Tulsa's future population back in 1957 would win the car. But when Cruz cracked open the vault on June 14, 2007, disaster struck. The so-called waterproof chamber had leaked for decades. More than 2,000 gallons of water, 4 feet deep, had drowned the Belvedere. The once pristine engine was filled with silt, and the car was beyond saving. The official winner, Raymond Humberson, had passed away in 1979, so the ruined car and the savings account, grown to about $667, went to his family. The Belvedere was later shipped to Ultra One in New Jersey for cleanup, then placed on display at historic auto attractions in Roscoe, Illinois, preserved as a haunting reminder of what 50 years underground can do. The buried Benz. In 2022, landscapers working at a mansion on Stockbridge Avenue in Atherton, California, dug only a few feet before striking something unusual. What they uncovered was the roof of a Mercedes-Benz convertible, buried 4 to 5 feet underground. Inside the car were unused bags of concrete, immediately raising suspicion. Cadaver dogs picked up faint scents, and for a moment, investigators feared they'd find a body. But after a full excavation and lab testing, no human remains were discovered. The car was identified as a 1991 Mercedes-Benz 500 SL, reported stolen in Palo Alto back in September 1992. The current owners, who bought the mansion in 2020, were cleared quickly. Attention turned instead to a former owner, Johnny B. Liu. Liu built the mansion in 1990 and owned it until 2014, before dying the next year. His record was far from clean, convicted of attempted murder in 1977, charged with trying to sink a $1.2 million yacht for insurance money in 1999 and previously tied to a murder case in 1966. When the Mercedes disappeared in the early 90s, Lou collected about $87,000 from insurance. On November 3, 2022, investigators confirmed the buried Benz was yet another insurance scam. No remains, no charges, just another chapter in Lou's long trail of frauds left rotting in the dirt. The buried speed demon. In 1926, a monstrous car called Babs tore across Pendine Sands in Wales, setting a world land speed record. Originally built as the Hyam Special, it was transformed by engineer J.G. Parry Thomas with a massive 27-litre Liberty L-12 aircraft engine pushing out 450 horsepower. On April 28, 1926, it smashed records at 171.02 miles per hour on the sand, but less than a year later, tragedy struck. On March 3, 1927, during another high-speed run, something failed. Parry Thomas was killed instantly, and the wreck of Babs was buried in the dunes. For 40 years it stayed hidden, until 1967, when engineer Owen Wynne Owen secured permission to dig it out. Old film reels show the corroded chassis being slung with cables and hauled up by crane. The car was battered, but the mighty V12 engine still had life. Owen painstakingly restored it, preserving as much of the original as possible. By the early 1970s, against all odds, Babs was running again. For decades, the cause of Parry Thomas's death was believed to be a snapped drive chain, but later evidence revealed the true culprit, a right rear wheel failure. Today, Babs survives as a living relic of speed history, displayed at the Museum of Land Speed at Pendine and at the Brooklands Museum in winter. It has even returned to Pendine for special runs, still flaunting its exposed chain drive and colossal engine, one of the wildest race cars ever built. The vanished family wagon. In 1958, Portland was rocked by the mysterious disappearance of the Martin family. Ken and Barbara Martin, along with their 3 daughters, set out in their 1954 Ford station wagon to gather Christmas greenery and never came back. Searchers scoured the Columbia River Gorge for months. The bodies of the 2 younger daughters were eventually recovered from the river, but the station wagon itself was never found. For over 60 years, the case lingered as one of Oregon's most haunting cold mysteries. That changed in late 2024, when independent diver Archer Mayo, who had been searching the gorge for 7 years, spotted the wreck of a station wagon buried under silt and rock, about 50 feet underwater near Cascade Locks. The site was treacherous, hidden inside the old lock system and clogged with debris. On March 6th and 7th, 2025, the Hood River County Sheriff's Office brought in a professional salvage team. They managed to raise the car's frame, engine, and rear axle, but the rest was too fragile to recover. Investigators strongly believe it to be the Martins' Ford, though the VIN was unreadable, leaving room for doubt. Then, in August 2025, Mayo reported finding human remains and personal belongings at the site during follow-up dives. Local outlets carried his claims, though official confirmation from medical examiners is still pending. The Forgotten Barn Find. Just north of Austin, Texas, a barn sat sealed for more than 40 years, hiding one of the most remarkable vintage car collections ever uncovered. Jack and Sally, a couple who moved from Wisconsin to Cedar Park in 1973, had carefully parked their pre-war cars inside and, for reasons unknown, never touched them again. In 2015, collector Antonio Brune finally gained access to the barn and pulled away the dust and covers. What he revealed stunned the car world, a lineup that looked like it had been frozen in time. Among the treasures was a 1908 Rio Model G with a quirky bolt-on boat tail, a 1923 Milburn Electric Model 27L, a 1932 Cadillac 370BV, 12 convertible Victoria, a 1933 Cadillac 370CV, 12-town coupe, and a 1938 Cadillac V, 16 Series 90 Fleetwood limousine. Even the couple's 1937 Cozy Coach travel trailer was still there, untouched since the day it was parked. When the collection was finally sent to Motostalgia's Brickyard auction at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on June 12, 2015, bidders from across the country drove the prices sky high. The Milburn fetched $165,000. The Rio brought in $14,500. The convertible Victoria sold for $286,000. The Town Coupe went for $55,000. The V16 limousine for $46,750, and the Cozy Coach for $66,000. In total, the forgotten barn find reached an astonishing $723,250, turning decades of dust and silence into one of the most valuable barn discoveries ever recorded. The vanished Electra. In September 1967, 59-year-old Roy George Benn walked out of King's Supper Club in Sartell, Minnesota, and disappeared without a trace. He had been driving a metallic blue 1963 Buick Electra, and rumors swirled that he was carrying a large amount of cash. Despite extensive searches, neither Benn nor his car was ever found. In 1975, he was declared legally dead, his fate a lingering mystery. That mystery unraveled nearly 6 decades later. In August 2025, a fisherman scanning the Mississippi River with sonar noticed something unusual on his screen. Dive teams moved in, and about 20 feet down, buried in river silt, they uncovered the shape of a car. When it was winched to the surface, the VIN confirmed the truth. It was Benn's long-lost Buick Electra. Inside, investigators found human remains. The vehicle was half filled with mud, its body corroded from decades underwater. It was hauled to Sartell Police Headquarters for evidence processing, while the remains were sent to the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office for identification. Officials are still awaiting final confirmation, but after nearly 60 years, the story of Roy George Benn may finally be approaching its end. The yellow Celica. On the night of April 16, 1983, 23-year-old Karen Scheepers left an evening out with her co-workers in Carpentersville, Illinois. She climbed into her canary yellow 1980 Toyota Celica and drove off, but she never made it home. For more than 40 years, her disappearance remained one of the region's most enduring mysteries, with no trace of Karen or her car. That changed on March 25, 2025. Sonar specialists from Chaos Divers teamed up with Elgin Police to search the Fox River near the Slate Avenue boat launch. In just 7 feet of water, their sonar lit up the outline of a vehicle. Divers went down and quickly surfaced with a license plate, XP8919. It was Karen's car. The Celica was hauled from the river, and inside were skeletal remains. 2 days later, the Kane County coroner confirmed the news her family had waited decades to hear. The remains were Karen's. In a twist, reporters later revealed the river had nearly given up its secret years earlier. Back in 2022, someone scanning the water with sonar had spotted the same car and reported it. But a dive team mistakenly assumed it was a small off-road vehicle and left it behind. After Karen's recovery in 2025, Elgin officials announced new procedures to ensure tips like that would never be dismissed again. The pond on Google Earth. On the night of November 7, 1997, 40-year-old William Earl Mould left a nightclub in Lantana, Florida. Around 9:30, he called his girlfriend to say he was heading home in his white 1994 Saturn SL. That was the last anyone ever heard from him. For 22 years, the case stayed cold. Then, in August 2019, a former resident scrolling on Google Earth noticed something odd in a pond behind homes in Wellington's Grand Isles neighborhood. The shape looked exactly like a car underwater. A current homeowner sent up a drone and confirmed the outline of a white sedan at the bottom of the pond. Deputies rushed to the scene, and divers pulled out a heavily calcified Saturn that had clearly been there for decades. Inside were skeletal remains. On September 10, 2019, the Palm Beach County Medical Examiner confirmed the remains were Williams. Investigators pieced together what had likely happened. He left the club alone, didn't seem drunk, but was driving through an area that in 1997 was still under construction, poorly lit, with almost no barriers. Somehow, his car went off the road and into the pond. Satellite images later showed the car had been visible as far back as 2007, but it took until 2019 for anyone to finally notice it. The garden car. In 2020, during the first COVID lockdown, John Brayshaw of Heckmondwike decided to build a backyard deck. As his post hole digger hit something metallic, He assumed it was just old scrap, but soon came shards of glass and the gentle curve of a roofline. What Brayshaw had uncovered was far more remarkable: a full-sized car buried beneath his garden. The car turned out to be a 1950s Ford Popular 103E, lying on its side with the engine and license plate still in place. Its wheels were gone, but the majority of the vehicle remained astonishingly intact, preserved in the soil for more than 50 years. The discovery quickly made headlines, drawing local newspapers and TV crews. After all, it's not every day a whole car is unearthed in someone's backyard. At first, the origins of the buried Ford were a mystery, but a few weeks later, a man came forward with an explanation. His father, Harold Lyles, a World War II veteran, had once lived at the property. In 1964, when the Ford broke down beyond repair, Harold faced a choice: pay to scrap it or find a cheaper solution. He chose the latter, burying the car and leveling the ground over it. The Ford Popular had been Britain's reliable no-frills family car in the mid-1950s. Based on its trim, enthusiasts believe Brayshaw's garden car was a 1955 or 1956 model. Forgotten for nearly 6 decades, it only returned to the light thanks to a simple DIY project: the sports car in the gunpit. In 2017, archaeologists excavating old World War II training pits at Lark Hill on Salisbury Plain expected to find discarded military equipment. What they didn't anticipate was the skeleton of a car. As soil was carefully brushed away, a rusted chassis emerged, not from a tank or truck, but from a 1932 MGJ2 sports car. Remarkably, the body panels, axles, and brake drums were still intact after decades underground. The team even scanned the remains and built a 3D model before carefully moving it. In the 1930s, an MGJ2 sold for about £199, a significant sum at the time. With its 847 cubic centimetre engine, twin carburetors, and cable drum brakes, it produced around 36 horsepower and could reach up to 80 miles per hour depending on tuning. Only about 283 were ever built, making the discovery extraordinarily rare. Initially, no one understood how such a car ended up at the bottom of a wartime gunpit. Some speculated it had been scrapped around 1960 when stricter safety rules came into play. Then a man named Patrick Shannon came forward with a memory. As a boy in the 1960s, he and friends would push a red MG down hills for fun, until one day it rolled too far, landing in the pit. The hole was filled and the car was forgotten. For over 50 years, the MGJ2 lay buried beneath Salisbury Plain, a hidden relic of British motoring history and childhood mischief, until archaeologists unearthed it by chance. The Longbridge Tunnel Mini. Beneath the old Longbridge car factory in Birmingham lies a forgotten labyrinth of tunnels, originally built during World War II to shelter workers and equipment from bombing raids. By the 2000s, these passages had become nothing more than dusty storage spaces. But in November 2012, a former employee named Steve Morgan helped uncover something extraordinary: a Mini Clubman 1275 GT that had been hidden underground for nearly 3 decades. The tale behind it was just as unusual as the location. A shipping container had once fallen on the car, crushing its roof. Instead of repairing it, the factory simply stashed the damaged Mini below ground. By the time it was rediscovered, the roof had been patched, the engine and gearbox were long gone, and most of the parts were missing. Still, the fact that it had survived in such a bizarre hiding place sparked huge interest. Dubbed the Longbridge Tunnel Mini, it quickly became a sensation among collectors and enthusiasts. Many debated whether it should be fully restored or preserved exactly as it was found, scars and all. In July 2013, the stripped shell went up for auction and sold for about £1,400, a modest price for a car, but a huge sum for a story. That's all for today. Which buried or forgotten car amazed you the most? Comment below and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another jaw-dropping find.